we have Dr. Kojo Opoku, development economist and lecturer at the University of Ghana here in Accra, as in Legon. We're also joined by Dr. Daniel Amartey, friend of this house, and we know him principally for his association with the Business and Financial Times, but he is, of course, a research and development economist in his own right with Pied Ghana. And so we say good morning to, first of all, to you, Dr. Kojo Opoku.
Thank you very much, Nana Yaa, and good morning to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Asaase Breakfast Show. And Dr. Daniel Amartey, I hope you can hear us. Dr. Daniel Amartey, I hope you are with us on the phone and you can hear us.
Yeah. Hello, good morning, Anna.
Good morning to you, and lovely to hear the sound of your voice. Thank you for joining us on the Asaase Breakfast Show. But if I could turn first to Dr. Kojo Opoku, maybe, and ask you, green shoots of the economy, growth projected at something just under around the 5% or just above for this year. For you, how much of this is a case of recent interventions and particularly the cautious monetary line taken by the Bank of Ghana?
Thank you very much. I listened to what you played between the former vice president and the president on the light note. Look as if you are bringing me between two big people, two big citizens of this country. And so, in analyzing the economy as you have asked, these are key important questions that we need to ask. For every policy, what are the intentions of the policymakers and what are the unintended costs of what your policy could do? So, as you have all known, Bank of Ghana is doing kind of contractionary monetary policy in that regard, and that has effect on the growth of the economy. And if what the former vice president is saying also is true, that you are not paying the contractors and you are not paying the IPP with the electricity, especially when you are having electricity not off like that, then you are also putting a lot of pressure on your industries. That will have negative effect on the growth, even though the rate is already low. And also, even the Cedi depreciation that from now we know that it is a deliberate policy by the Bank of Ghana and the government of Ghana. And that one also has effect because you are implicitly giving subsidy to foreigners, to people to import, that people should consume more of import. It's a subsidy. And at that time, you are not also giving anything to your domestic producers. So you are telling all Ghanaians that it is better for us to import because they are cheap. And so what you are telling your producers is that it's better for you even to turn from being a producer to employ people and become an importer because it's cheaper to import and sell. So consumers are going to tend to import a lot of goods at the expense of production, and that has effect on your employment. That you are going to send more people that are graduating, and that if this thing persists for some time, you are just going to increase the unemployment rate. And so, what is going on? But of course, if you are somebody, an average Ghanaian that's interested in maybe the short term, that is interested in how goods and price of goods will reduce drastically in a moment, then you enjoy. But of course, when you are thinking like that, think about the fact that your neighbor might lose job and that person may become poor. So you should also take that into consideration. So It is good for people in the short term, but in the long term, as you ask, our growth is going to be affected. Our unemployment is going to be affected. Our domestic production is going to be affected. And as well, in the long term, when you deplete your reserves, then you are going to also have the effect that you are going to see a higher level of depreciation, and that will be very rapid because you don't have enough reserves. Because currently you have a lot of reserves. The market, the international market, is very, very favorable to Ghana and other African countries, and because of that, there are a lot of inflows that are coming. Though it is not by our doing, it's just that things are favorable for us. But it is the government and the Bank of Ghana that decide this inflows that is coming. Should we put it there as reserve and make sure that in future, if the things are not going on well, we'll use this to stabilize? Or let's think about now and let's see what we can do for our people to be happy. So let's put it into the system to ensure that there's appreciation. So in that bit of you deciding to make to put a lot of dollars into the system for the currency to depreciate, to appreciate, in that sense, you are making a deliberate policy to achieve what you have now. But it is such, maybe they have not actually analyzed it to see how it's going to affect the economy. But we know that when you bring this kind of policies, that's why most of the developed countries, they try to avoid this kind of appreciation, and that will lead to exchange rate overvaluations, which are not good, and misalignment, which are not good for your domestic producers. And so we should be thinking more in terms of the general effect, not only in partial. Just look at it can reduce prices, but what can it do to your unemployment? What can it do to your growth in the long term? So you are going to displace a lot of domestic producers and employers, and I think that we need to consider all these things once we are having a strategy. As of now, I know that Bank of Ghana, since its main goal is stability, price stability, employment and other things are secondary to them. So once it is their main important thing, then they are ready to undertake any decision to reduce prices at any cost, and the cost is the implication on the growth rate as you asked.
Daniel Inim, I hope you'll have heard most of Dr. Kojo Opoku's suggestions there, or presentation there. In effect, this is he's presenting a temporary solution focused on one end of the market, very much complementing the current structure of the Ghanaian economy, which is very much import driven. But in favouring that side, we've heard the expressions of enthusiasm from the Ghana Union of Traders Associations, GUTA, in response to the strengthening of the Cedi in particular, and as he said, individual consumers rejoicing over the impact that this might have on everything from fares to the prices of certain specific imported goods. We've seen certain furniture stores cutting their prices. Now, as from your perspective as a development economist, with the policy initiative for the economy in Ghana, for PIDE Ghana, and also as with your position in research at the Business and Financial Times, how much of the current very cautious moves by the financial actors, the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, and indeed the Ministry for Finance, how far are they calculated around limited factors that have a macroeconomic effect only, but may have unintended consequences in the future?
Right, thank you very much. Now, it appears today the internet connectivity couldn't allow me to really enjoy your voice as I used to. But if I found the question posed to me, you wanted to know the current Bank of Ghana strategy and its overall effect on the economy, significantly the gold for oil policy as was implemented by the government.
Well, I wanted to know if you thought that the policy has unintended consequences and if it affects more than the macroeconomy.
Oh, okay, very well. Yes, at the time where the oil for gold policy was implemented, anyway, let me briefly explain it for the purposes of our listeners. That policy moves in about 3 minutes. 3 seconds. The oil for gold policy was initiated by the Bank of Ghana, principally to stabilize the Cedi and manage our foreign exchange reserves, okay, so that we could use gold as a tradable asset for oil import. So what it means is that we realize that historically or traditionally, we have to use the dollar anytime we are importing oil into our economy, and that depletes our reserves at the Bank of Ghana. So the strategy was that, okay, let's use gold to import or use it as a collateral instead of dealing directly with the forest. Okay, and the purpose is to not to deplete our reserves and also have so much reserve to be able to meet demand that as and when it may fall due. Okay, so it is a short-term mechanism which has really helped to stabilize the value of the currency fairly, if you watch, and also helped in a way to reduce inflation. If you look at that policy, I think I've been interviewed in respect of this policy on this respectable platform, and my view then was, and I speak by that view, that it was a very good initiative, but it is a short-term mechanism. Okay, that if we really want to deal with the depreciation of the Cedi, two critical things are important. You must have a productive base or a production base. Now, what it means is that you should be able, as a nation, to produce certain goods locally at a specific prices. If you look at the structure of our economy, it's largely import-driven. And because it is import-driven, there's always so much a demand for the dollar. Hence, depletion our reserve at the Bank of Ghana. So at any point in time that the nation is unable to attract more inflows into the country, and the demand outweighs the supply of dollars, then the Cedi will have to depreciate. And this is the basic. So my view was to be able to restore macroeconomic stability and propel growth. Let's have a production base as an economy. Let's minimize importation of certain commodities that we have competitive edge of producing. So if you look at Nanado's budget as presented, that's the reason why we have the 1G, 1F initiative. Because the idea was to have a productive base to be able to support economic activity. Of course, on the larger scale, the government of Ghana then couldn't achieve that, but some interventions were made for us to be able to have that productive base. So as it stands now, an economy without a production base, okay, whatever policy you put in place to be able to stabilize the local currency is a short-term mechanism. Now, what is happening, I must admit also that the good for oil mechanism has actually helped within that short-term period to be able to stabilize the Cedi. And if you look at the data, unfortunately, I don't have it often, you will see that certain level of fairly stability in terms of the performance of the local of the Cedi. There again, we have seen the reduction of inflation, though at the rate that it was quite marginal, but constantly we have seen a certain degree of reduction in inflationary pressures. So that is a short-term mechanism. What is happening to us now, and I'll come to the overall effect and then the positive. What is happening to us now? Why the Cedi is appreciating, and I have cautioned that government must be very careful in terms of joining the celebration. Number one, it's as a result of the global war that is currently happening, and we are taking advantage of that. Number two, President Mahama.
Sorry, Dr. Enim, when you say the global war, you mean the tariffs war, the trade war?
Yeah, the trade war between the United States and its key economic powers like China and other economies, okay, right, which in effect is weakening the value of the dollar, etc.
Right.
Now, I must also admit, in fact, going by the debate that is currently going, so we cannot discount the contribution of Bank of Ghana in terms of the oil for good policy that was initiated, okay? Because we're running the government, and the government is continuing, and economic policy runs in series. It takes time to yield certain positive results. So we cannot discount oil for good policy so implemented and say that it has not contributed to the stability of the city. I would disagree with experts and political analysts that may make such proposition. Okay, but then again, I must equally admit that His Excellency John Mahama is enjoying a certain goodwill. He's coming into power and looking at massively the way Ghanaians have given their years to him. I mean, in terms of the post at the general elections, it appears that people are having a certain degree of hope that he has what it takes to transform Ghana's economy. And let me tell you, in the currency market, speculation is very key. And at any time that a particular leadership or a particular party, so to speak, appears to have a certain goodwill, you see investors falling in line. Okay, so that is also a contributing factor to what is happening now. But the economic factors, number one, we shouldn't also forget that the IMF contribution to what is happening now shouldn't also be discounted, because at the time where we find it difficulty and our reserves, was virtually empty, we have to resort to the IMF for bailout. What it did was to bring about investors' confidence and credibility. Based on that, we were able to negotiate with external creditors. Okay, so as it stands now, Government of Ghana, through Bank of Ghana, is not paying any obligation in terms of we meeting our debt obligation as a result of the public debt restructuring mechanism. We may start in 2026, and that is where the reality may set in. So my point is that because we are not making a repayment obligation, there's not so much pressure on our reserve at the Bank of Ghana. So we have reserve to be able to meet demand. Number two, in recent time, we have received support from the IMF, which further beef our reserves, and also the previous oil for good policy, and what His Excellency President Mahama is doing now in terms of the gold board. So even though it's a different name, you can see that in terms of policy direction, it serves the same purpose. Okay, so what is happening is that investors and people holding the dollar, anticipating that going forward, if you quote the dollar, you may not benefit from it. So people are releasing the dollar into the economy. Okay, watching the market, still analyzing and see whether the economic variables will change, and then the city will be able to withstand, the global phenomenon. So boxing all together, these are the reasons which we are experiencing the appreciation of the local currency. And I see, and I strongly believe so, pure from policy perspective, from economic perspective, that is a short-term mechanism. Okay, and if we move through the fourth quarter, which is the peak season for traders and businesses to import goods into our local economy, there will be so much demand for dollar. And we should be able to set up beef up and take advantage. If that is not done, the reality will set in, and then the city will start depreciating. Because the cost to be able to anchor the value of your currency is this basic thing. Have a production base as an economy. Minimize importation of certain commodities that you have competitive edge of producing. You can see that in this budget led by the Honorable Dr. Fortin, that they are going to beef up agriculture and add value. And if you recall, it is against that reason that even the Ministry of Trade and Industry is now the Ministry of Trade and Agribusiness. Okay, so that along the value chain, opportunities could be created, and we could, export more to bring inflow into the domestic economy. To me, that is the only way we'll be able to stabilize the value of our cedi. That will be the only way that we'll be able to beef up our reserves and also minimize inflation and overall stability of the macroeconomic front. But the point is that in 2026, if we start meeting repayment obligations, and even in this fiscal year 2025, by the fourth quarter, where businesses will be importing so much into the economy, we should expect a certain degree of pressure on the city, because people will be demanding for more dollars to be able to do the importation. But for now, it's a good news for the country. Our city is appreciating this all over globally, people are applauding the nation. But I must admit that the policy so implemented or being implemented by His Excellency fiscal budget, one cannot say it is the direct effect of whatever is happening to the nation. And that's the reason which I've, sent a little bit of caution respectfully to the Honorable Finance Minister that he and his team should join the celebration. They must still focus on the policies in the budget aimed at bringing overall stability and bringing stability and then to possibly prepare growth going forward.
Yes.
Focus on the key variables. How do we take advantage of this windfall to further build our reserves? How do we support industries? How do we build production base? How do we conform with fiscal discipline, which is very key?
Right.
And so that if the external factors should change, it will not have so much impact on the local economy.
Right.
So to me, these are some of the critical things that ought to be done now. They must take themselves for the celebration because it's purely a short-term phenomenon. And when you do not have a concrete economic policy on ground to be able to deal with that, but one of the things I have seen...
Dr. Amartey, sorry, if I can just interrupt you a moment to bring in Dr. Kojo Opoku, because you heard there, Dr. Kojo Opoku, pretty much aligned with your proposition earlier on, but perhaps expressed in slightly more moderated terms there, that this is a very much temporary solution which doesn't affect the fundamental problems, the fundamental structural problems of our economy. Nonetheless, the cedi, one of the best performing currencies in the past month, as much gloated over by Bloomberg correspondents here in Accra, and signs of returning business confidence, more importantly, particularly in relation, yes, to the imports front, but not exclusively so. A piece in the Business and Financial Times by Professor Eric Oting-Ebeye of KNUST points to some of the longer-term problematic factors raised there by Dr. Inim, particularly things such as price stickiness and a slight stubbornness of inflation to go away, particularly in relation to such things as food costs. There was a marginal drop in food price inflation between March and April. What are the other longer-term indicators that now, if you like, the emergency work has done, you would like the current government and associated agencies to begin seriously addressing? Dr. Opoku, I hope you're still on the line to us.
Yes, I think the line was not clear. If your question could ask the question again.
Yes, I was saying you heard the shorter term factors that have induced, if you like, increased business confidence and have led to the favourable performance of the cedi on international currency markets, as described by Dr. Inim. But a piece in the Business and Financial Times points to some other factors as indicative of deeper problems that the current government needs to address. Principally, the sort of price stickiness, inflation, as Dr. Inim was describing there, not being substantially produced. I think we have a target of 12% for the end of the year. What other factors, longer term, which can have an effect on the structural economy, do you think this government needs to address next?
Thank you very much. So, in other ways, you are talking about the things fundamentals. That's actually, I always say the exchange rate is basically like the brain of human beings because it directs us, it gives us the signal, everything. So if your brain is not working well, even when you get in touch of fire, the way it will affect you may not be able to know it at a point that you should know. So once you are doing things to correct misalignment and other things, then you're actually solving your fundamental problems. Energy is one of the key problems in Ghana. And so if you see that some people actually import manufactured goods from China, from outside, they will come to Ghana and it's still cheaper than those ones that have been produced here in Ghana. Despite the transportation cost and everything, it is still cheaper and energy. And therefore, we need to make a lot of investment in the energy sector, the power sector. But unfortunately, always into the short term. So when you had energy crisis in 2012, 2013, 2014 or so, we resulted in bringing thermal plant, which is very costly and also depends on the international market, the oil, the fuel that we use from outside. So anytime you get into a problem with fuel importation, the prices increase. Now it is good. The prices is 64 or so. So very cheap. Even that one, we are still having problem with it. Then imagine if it gets to 100 or so. So we have not been able to, in recent time, able to do hydro. And even now that the solar is becoming cheaper, we are still not investing in those areas that will help our manufacturers to produce at cheaper prices. So if you want to do things, change the structure, we should be able to move, actually invest in that infrastructure, the energy infrastructure, to increase it, to make it cheaper for producers to use our power. Then two, even our roads, you when you are walking around, when it really started, you are seeing it. And if you are walking, last time I was saying it, when you are moving, the food prices and all those things that we see, sometimes we think that it is the sellers who are greedy and they are doing, but sometimes if you consider the cost, by the time they bring the goods from the hinterland to this place, the number of them that have got spoiled, I mean, sometimes they have to factor all those things into their pricing. So we may say that, oh, we see this thing is going, the prices, we are producing a lot. But the transportation alone, and because our road systems are not good, I always saying that if you have a railway from here to the north, probably we could even transport watermelon to Japan and other places that they need it. But because by 3 hours or so, the thing will be in Accra, and you could just use flight to take it away and go and sell it there to increase, so that the farmers there, when they produce, they will get higher prices from those areas. They won't allow those things to got spoiled. So those infrastructure, road infrastructure, are very critical and helping our domestic producers. So whatever it takes. And so there are a lot of economists, even from outside, that have said that we are disadvantaged. Developing countries are disadvantaged in many areas. And therefore, we should do things that will make importation expensive, relatively expensive, especially non-essentials. Of course, things like energy, things like food and other things. If we don't have the local substitute, then if you make it expensive, you are actually reducing the welfare of your people. Your people will be going into problems.
So Dr. Kojo Opoku, nobody would disagree with you on the fundamental point of the idea of import substitution and our need to increase the level of goods that we produce and can consume ourselves, or perhaps even export to other African countries. I wondered, from the point of view of some of the immediate term red lights on the horizon. You described, of course, the elephant in the room, which is the need to begin paying back on some of the loans that we contracted to see us through the worst of the economic downturn. The end of the extended credit facility arrangement that we have with the IMF. And even such measures as you talked about road infrastructure there. The government has announced a big push, a launch of a $10 billion big push, very much infrastructure directed, promising to pay contractors, according to one news source, within 2 weeks of the start of contractors, and it's made it sound as if that is going to start very soon. With all those new pressures coming to bear on the economy in the next year to a couple of years, what are the essential things that Ghana needs to do to step up to ensure that it can absorb those coming shocks?
Thank you. So, as I would say, we know that definitely we will get to a point where we will start servicing our debt. And that's why in the first conversation, I was talking about the fact that at this point that things are favorable, we should be focusing on at least increasing our reserves to be ready so that we'll be ready in the future when we are supposed to pay it. Because what you need in the economy for a lot of domestic producers and entrepreneurs is the stability that they need, the predictability of the system. And so at this point that things are good, we should not trying to make things good, the optics, or good for the government, so that they're trying everything to reduce, to make sure that the price are reduced, the exchange rate, because now actually it has become a political, something that they use it, political tool, that they use to determine whether you are performing well or not. But it is not like that.
Right, but Dr. Opoku, if the president says that reserves have gone up from $8.9 billion at the end of last year to $10.6 billion this year, that is exactly along the lines that you're advocating.
No, I don't think that. If you look at our 2024, by that time, our debt the external debt was about $28 billion, external debt alone. So imagine that excludes interest. So when you start paying, and maybe you are paying $3 billion a year, $3 billion a year, that means that all this, you won't get money for even the import. So you need to prepare for this. So while things are favorable now, you have to ensure that you'll be able to accumulate a lot. And you remember that the market, the global market, has not also always been the kind favorable as we ought. They have made it a system that whilst we are feeling good now, Nigeria is struggling because oil prices are low. So they are having problem over there. The oil producing countries, the next oil producing countries are suffering. So things, they will work things out that to the extent that you won't see this permanently. This will be a temporary. They will ensure that the prices will go up again. So once you're getting this favorable market, you need to prepare for that, but you don't have to consume it. This kind of transitory income that you are getting, reserves that you are getting, keep it. Don't put it into the system for the consumer. You can do it deliberately, just a little, to make sure that the city is stable for other people now to also enjoy what is going on. Then in future, if there's a problem, you can solve it. So I think that is the way to go. Then people can also plan to, as you talk about import substitution and even export-led growth. Then once your people are able to produce domestically, then you can even decide that you want to increase it. They develop their base, they get the scale, economies of scale, then they can send some out for you to earn more, to look into the future when you start making all these payments and your import also has increased. Because now you are actually increasing the import base of your consumers. So you need to think about those things and increase your reserves to wait for the time when things are not good.
So, Dr. Amartey Nim, you heard there from Dr. Kojo Opoku, short-term fixes being the danger and us being dazzled by them. Again, at the Money Summit 2025, which the Business and Financial Times was involved in, and you were largely involved in organising this year, matters of monetary policy would have been much under discussion, but also the productive economy. Now, from your perspective, from the policy initiative for economic diversification Africa, what are the medium-term fixes that you would encourage the government to look towards or to work on that will both help us diversify our economic basket and, importantly, create jobs without, as Kojo Opoku said, feeling the need to offer sweeties to a general public and so dissipating the gains so far made?
Right, thank you, Nana. Yes, I agree with Dr. Opoku on a number of things that he indicated. That going forward, energy is very key to drive significantly, to drive the economic policy outlined by His Excellency John Mahama. So energy is key, absolutely. But to answer your question, my view is that to be able to develop any economy, the heart of the economy is your financial sector. Okay, because because the role of the financial sector is to mobilize excess liquidity for all lending for business. So I think it comes back to your financial sector, lack the capacity to be able to extend facility at a competitive rate to businesses. It affects production. Okay, so what is happening now is that, in fact, most people prefer commerce rather than production. They prefer buying from China, Thailand, Turkey, and other places and sell in the market rather than going to production. And it is a production that will create jobs. It is a production that will bring about the economic growth that we are all anticipating to have. So the financial sector is very key. The government of Ghana should be able to devise strategy to support that. To me, going into the long-term broader perspective as part of our broader economic reform has to do with deliberately developing local participants in our economic equation. What I mean is that local entrepreneurs. If you look at our economy, the economy is largely owned by foreign participants. I have done some studies on the FDI, foreign direct investment, and that is key and critical for any developing economy. I will not discuss that. Okay, but what I'm saying is that your economic, the assets within your domestic economy should be owned by Ghanaians. And it can be by deliberate policy, taking out policies out of the equation. So that is one of the things that have to be done. Now, as we speak now, the cost of capital is very high, which is affecting about the cost of businesses of well, energy is also a factor. So we are losing so much business to our neighbor, Cote d'Ivoire. Foreign participants are now prefer Cote d'Ivoire as a destination to Ghana. We were dictating the pace and the gateway to Africa. We are missing it. So within the long-term broader policy reform, let's focus on the financial sector, and so that they'll be able to extend facility at a very competitive rate to our producers, our manufacturers, and our business people to be able to produce at a competitive rate, so that at the end of the day, the prices of goods that will be produced could compete with goods coming from China. And then equally, we should also have a deliberate policy on making sure we minimize imports. Of course, it is in this budget, it was in the previous budget by the previous government. Then that is where government is saying that they're going to focus on rice production, poultry production, etc. That we need that commitment, and we need that bold leadership to be able to step into that particular direction, because that's the way to go. Okay. And another key reform.
Sorry, briefly, Dr. Enim.
Briefly, the last one to my mind that will support is by broader stakeholder consultation and engagement, and let's minimize the petty politics from our development equation. Okay, if that is well managed, my view is that taking into consideration the level of our knowledge, our sociology as a people, we should be able to, and the resources available to us, we should be able to quickly turn things around.
Dr. Enim, thank you. Final words from you, Dr. Kojo Opoku.
Thank you very much, Nana Yaa. So, as I've already talked about it, at this point that things are favorable to Ghana, we should be looking into the long-term view than the short-term fixes, and ensure that the gains that we are getting now, we'll use it for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Dr. Kojo Opoku there of the University of Ghana, development economist, and also to Dr. Daniel Amartey Enim of the Policy Initiative for Economic Diversification in Africa, PIDE Africa. A comment by Abdul Basit Mahama, one of our listeners. He says, in his usual thoughtful way, stability is not about exchange rates alone, but about reaching a settling point that ensures medium to long-term certainty and allows for planning. Therefore, an exchange rate of 15 cedis, 50 pesos that remains stable for months may be better than a fluctuating rate of 12. Anything between 12 and the 18-20 that we saw at the end of last year, as mentioned by Dr. Kojo Opoku previously on the Asaase Breakfast Show. So less of the politicking and more of the getting down to brass tacks. Stay tuned to the Asaase Breakfast Show. Coming up in a minute, a discussion about matters of a threatened strike starting today.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.